Okay, well, hello. Hi, everyone who's joining us. I'm Melissa Elders. Many of you may know me as the International Account Manager at BookBub, the book marketing and discovery service with millions of members across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. And some of you may know me from my previous roles at Faber and Faber and the Independent Alliance, or previously at Penguin Group. And today I'm thrilled to join you as part of Future Books programming and lead a discussion about publishing new voices and reaching new readers. At BookBub, we think quite a lot about discoverability, not just helping readers discover new books and new authors, which is what we are known for, but also helping publishers and authors discover new audiences. The importance of publishing new and diverse voices also highlights the opportunity to reach untapped readers and the urgent need to find new ways of connecting with them. This panel conversation will discuss how the industry is recalibrating approaches to launching debut authors, increasing discoverability, and reaching new audiences. I'm joined by two stakeholders from the industry who will be able to share their perspectives on these approaches. First, Nia Benyon, the Publishing, Sales, and Marketing Director of Boldwood Books, which is only 3 years old, but has made a standout impact in global fiction in a very short time, signing more than 100 authors, selling more than 10 million books, and winning awards, including this year's Independent Publisher of the Year award. Most recently, head of digital publishing HQ at HarperCollins, where she ran the digital first imprint, HQ Digital, and previously sales director at Head of Zeus, where she was part of the team that won Independent Publisher of the Year in 2017. Nia was named a Bookseller Rising Star in 2020. And Nikki Ward, the digital sales manager of Head of Zeus, an independent publisher of genre fiction, narrative nonfiction, and children's books. Head of Zeus has published nearly 100 number one bestsellers around the world, won many literary prizes and industry awards. Now 10 years old, they've won awards including Digital Publisher of the Year in 2015 and Independent Publisher of the Year in 2017. In 2021, Head of Zeus was acquired by Bloomsbury. Previous to this role, Nikki was at Atlantic Books. So welcome, Nikki. Welcome, Nia. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
Hi. So let's start off by talking about publishing new voices. So at BookBub, we're continually seeking to promote a diversity of content from a diversity of perspectives in both our daily featured deals email and our display advertising platform. How has your search for new authors and voices changed? Have you seen a shift in the way that you're searching for new voices? Nia, do you want to start us off with how or where Boldwood is seeking new voices?
Sure. Nice to see you, Melissa. And basically, as you mentioned, Boulder, we're 3 years old, and there's a couple of sort of core principles that we had in place when we set up the business. One of which is that we're really proud to be a global publisher. So we don't see ourselves as a UK publisher. We acquire world English language rights for all of our titles as a minimum. And because of that, we do have 100 authors, but they're from all around the world. And so we do get real varying perspective from our authors as a result of that. So when we're acquiring content, we have acquired directly from the general public. Obviously, we work with agents, but because of the global ambition for the company, we're very much looking for perspectives from all around the world. So that's really interesting. And that means that we have a really broad list across lots of different genres, lots of authors from lots of different backgrounds. So that's really important. The second thing is just to flag that our editorial team, which is where the acquisition obviously all begins, are based all over the UK. So we don't have a London-centric acquisition team. We have editors based everywhere from sort of Birmingham, Bristol, Cheltenham, some in London. But it means that we're just getting that varying perspective and that comes through in the books that we acquire as well.
Great. It's so wonderful to hear. And Nikki, I had the pleasure of selling in that very first Head of Zeus list in 2012. How have things evolved in terms of your acquisition strategy and how you're thinking about new voices at Head of Zeus?
Well, our lists are ever growing. In the last year or so, we've really focused on creating 6 distinct imprints that have their own kind of brand and identity and teams that specialize in working in those genres. And because of that, we're able to acquire titles particularly into those markets, and also ensure that those lists represent the readership that those markets are aiming towards. I think one of our imprints, Ad Astra, which is our SF imprint, has probably the widest range of varying different authors and such, to the point where we have our second anthology of world science fiction publishing soon. That is just about 100 new voices within the SF world all across the world. And it is just one of the key things is just ensuring that the voices we publish represent the readership for those different genres. And it's just been kind of a couple of years in the working, but we're sort of getting there and building a list, and they're becoming more diverse and more wide ranging. So go on.
Yeah, and we'll speak a lot more towards genres in this conversation, because that's really important to us here. In terms of how you're creating consumer marketing campaigns, we are thinking a lot about the extra steps that we can take to make sure our campaigns are welcoming and engaging to new users across all identities, backgrounds, perspectives. How are you thinking about campaigns for books that you're promoting, ensuring you're reaching the widest breadth of reader identities? Nikki, you want to share a little bit about how you approach your marketing campaigns?
Sure. Over the past few years, we've definitely been working on accessibility in our marketing campaigns. We'll include alt text in any imagery that we're putting up, particularly on Twitter. Any author videos that we create will have subtitles on them. We're exploring the option of providing audio content for early reader reviews to kind of build that scope of bloggers that we're able to reach. And equally, we're looking at creating a bigger database of the bloggers that represent a more diverse list as well. So it's been these sort of like small steps to just make our content more accessible to more people that are kind of like starting to make the changes that we're seeing. And we'll just keep, every time something kind of comes up and goes, oh, we can start doing it differently this way. That's what we do. We'll just make these little changes along the way.
Mentioned to me, you had mentioned to me about audio as well. And I think that that's really interesting. Obviously, some of my colleagues from our sister company, Chirp, will be joining us at FutureBook22. And I think they'll be really interested in those audiobook efforts too.
Just to add to that, we're very much in our approach in multi-format. I mean, we're known well for our ebooks doing very well, but we do publish every single title simultaneously in all formats, and that includes audio, as Nikki's already mentioned, being obviously a hugely growing format, but also very accessible. We also produce everything in physical audio, and also everything in large print. And so when we're marketing, we're very much highlighting that we are multi-format. Every reader around the world on publication day can buy a Boldwood book in whatever format suits them. And I think that's really important, and that opens up the readership. The second thing really is just we obviously use a lot of different digital advertising platforms, BookBub being one of them, and also others, and their targeting tools and other platforms as well as BookBub, like Facebook, etc., have got great ways of targeting, setting up our campaigns. So we're targeting a wide range of people, so making sure that we're not just narrowly targeting the people that we think are guaranteed readers, but being able to broaden that out. So that's really interesting, and a really interesting way to analyze the audience as well.
Yes. And speaking of targeting that audience, like we're continually asking questions about demographics, psychographics, online behavior, for example, so we can better understand where to market to readers, what messaging they're going to respond to best. Perhaps you're thinking about this differently or approaching it differently. Are you thinking about reader personas and target keywords? With our ads, for example, we often see partners targeting campaigns to comparable authors to hone that audience for their ads.
Yeah, 100%. I think that every big digital advertising platform has that capability, so you can really drill down on what works and what doesn't. I think the other thing to think about is we are now advertising on lots of different platforms, many of which have different demographics. So, the advertising campaigns and the marketing campaigns we put on TikTok, for example, can be very different to what we do on Facebook. And so adapting that and making sure that we're having a tailored strategy for each platform is really important.
Yeah, similarly at Head of Zeus, we do a lot of kind of looking at the different markets. With each imprint came a marketeer who specializes in them, and they created marketing reports to identify the target audience that we need to be looking at. But we're just constantly reviewing that data, refreshing it, cross-referencing with the results we're getting on advertising at the times to make sure we're always kind of up to date and kind of key with where we're looking and who we're targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And related to that, how about author platforms? So, I work on our publisher team, but BookBub also has a collection of tools really aimed at authors, helping them to build their followings on our platform, like author profiles. But especially when you are thinking about starting from scratch with a new author, with a debut book, how are you encouraging them to engage with different platforms?
We have packs that we'll always give out to new authors of how to do this, what to do there, like how to set up your own BookBub profile and claim it and such. But I think one of the things I personally think is key to raise to new authors is that they've got to be comfortable with doing this. Not everyone is a natural born performer on social media, and you shouldn't have to feel as though you should move into that box and present yourself in such a way at the detriment of your own personal well-being, and it's always fun and enjoyable authentic voices that do best. So if you are that way, do it. If you're not, it's fine. We publishers have been publishing long before Twitter existed, so we'll work around whatever is most comfortable for the author at those points.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. I think we talk a lot in marketing about authenticity and building things organically. So it has to feel that way, and it has to come from their own voice as an author.
And I do think there
And
are
what do you think?
Oh, sorry, Melissa. I do think there are author platforms out there as well which require quite little effort from authors. So, if an author doesn't feel comfortable being front and center on TikTok, for example, that they can still claim their BookBub profile, for example, their Amazon profile, etc. And there are some quick wins there which will benefit them in terms of sales, but don't necessarily require them to, be front and center. My attitude to it is often, we do have a wide spectrum of authors. Everyone has their own sort of limits with what they're comfortable with. Sometimes it's worth with an author just saying, well, of these ones, which one do you feel most comfortable with? Focus on that. And you're much better off having one platform that works really well than trying to spread yourself too thinly across 5. So that's, if the author is up for some self-promotion, then we can help in that way. But we do work really closely with our authors to help them on that and help them figure out what's actually a good use of their time. We have authors, some of them writing 3-4 books a year, and sometimes it's quite, when you're expecting them to write that much, also asking them to run all these platforms can be a challenge. So I think that just being adaptable and open to, if they're not happy to do it, then that's fine. But there are some quick wins that they can do in the meantime.
Love that. Yes. And I know a lot of the attendees at FutureBook this week are focused on preparing book marketing assets. And obviously blurbs, teasers, quotes are a big business. They have been for years, but connecting with the most effective sources today, and specifically in the right genre, is key. I know for a fact, although it might not be well known, Nia, that you've crafted some of the blurbs for some of Boldwood's titles yourself. Do you have any tips to those who might be crafting them, preparing them to go out into the world as assets for a title?
I think this sounds probably very obvious, but thinking about who the actual audience is for that book and who you're targeting is really key, because I think that there are some genres where you do want to be very immediate and get straight into the story and give people the hook of what they're about to purchase. And then there are some genres where you're better off giving a bit more context and giving a bit more detail before getting into the nitty gritty of the plot. So I do think that has to be tailored. There's not sort of one size fits all. In terms of tips, I think having a second pair of eyes and second perspective is so important, because I know as an editor that you can write your blurb, and when another person reads it, they see a very different, they have a very different take on the stories from what you intended when you wrote the blurb. So I think having that, sort of collaborative approach, we're super collaborative at Bold. We all read each other's blurbs. We're more than happy to, say, have you thought about this? Why don't you try a different perspective? Because if you change the perspective of a blurb, it can completely transform it. And I think that's really interesting. The second thing as well, and this is sort of slightly different take on writing blurbs, obviously looking at comparisons. So when you're in the blurbs pointing out which author, if a debut author, for example, and you want to point a consumer out what other books they might like, I think thinking about other media as well and sort of wider cultural references is really important, because people are searching for books on Amazon, but they're also searching for TV, film, etc., and on other retailers. So I think thinking about other comparable media is also really important, because you could pick up some consumers that you might not have otherwise got, just by making things slightly more accessible.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely true. And I'll hop in before Nikki here. Just at BookBub, we get a lot of questions about our blurbs. So, we have a whole team of editors that are crafting these blurbs in their categories. And we often get questions like, who writes them? How do we decide what to include? And basically our editors are trying to get that hook and audience match just perfect. And they're crafting based on the copy and information that we know appeals particularly to the members subscribed in each category. So it's like very genre specific. And a lot of it is based on data we collect. So what copy is engaging readers the most? We're doing A and B testing to find out which copy variations are working the most, and certainly responding to trends and tropes in each genre. It's something we work on a lot. And Nikki, I know you also understand the importance of this as it flows through the publishing process. Do you have any tips that you can give to those crafting blurbs?
I think the one thing that Nia didn't touch on was probably the element of refreshing the data. I feel like a lot of the times editorial particularly focus towards the publication of a title, but then there is so much opportunity post-publication to relook at what you have put out in the world, whether it's seasonal subtitle or adding in new reader reviews into copy, updating keywords that you're kind of putting in throughout. And I think just being able to provide retailers with new, fresh data is also a way to kind of trick some algorithms into prioritizing certain titles in discoverability moments. So I very much be like every 6 months or so, have a look at your data of your title and see what it's doing and what kind of little bits you're missing, and you could be doing a bit more. It's my one nugget of advice.
Yeah, I love that. I hear that from so many of our partners when they're talking to us about those long tail effects that are not necessarily the things that we're measuring here, but things like moving up in those algorithms, moving up in those bestseller lists, that kind of effect. And a lot of that, that's a good transition that you've given me. Thank you. A lot of that is as a result of running ebook price promotions, which is by far the thing we're most known for at BookBub, because we send a daily email of featured deals, ebooks priced under about £3, to millions of members who have specified which genres they like to read most. And so we're really focused on reaching those power readers that are going to be interested in the discount. And I know for both of you, this is an essential part of many campaigns. For those, the audience of FutureBook may be full of new people who are new to price promotion. What are the benefits that you think you get from price promoting? Do you have some tips on creating featured deal promotions?
I think for us, we know that there are certain readers that will primarily or maybe even only buy at the 99p price promoted point. So you do need to serve your titles at that level to them. Working with BookBub is a fantastic opportunity because it kind of helps you put your titles in front of those readers. I love the phrase power reader, and so I'm going to describe myself going forward. I don't think I've come across that. I'm like, this is great. I'm a power reader now. But it is a route to the market that you just have to exploit and use. And it was probably one of the best ones I've seen in a while. Is the reason you're still working with you like 6-7 years after the first time.
Thank
And
you.
it is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you are definitely a power reader, Nikki. And actually, in our like pre-work for this, Nia mentioned to me that she actually received like a targeted BookBub ad herself, which I think means she's like one of those discerning power readers too that we're targeting. But certainly, it's certainly the discount part, that 99p price point, is very appealing. It's the part that gets people interested, gets that initial click. And we find a lot that those initial clicks lead to other purchases, not just discounted titles, but full price titles as well.
Yeah, I
And
think,
yeah, Mia, sorry, go ahead, please.
I mean, in terms of price promotion, there's a couple of tips that I would share. One is sort of setting your realistic goals and expectations. I mean, when you drop the price to 99p, going back sort of 7 or 8 years, that was the golden bullet, and that would be the way to get your book right up the chart and to raise your visibility. And dropping the price to 99p was a really effective tool. Unfortunately, we're now in a much more crowded marketplace where that isn't the golden bullet that's going to get your title to the top of the chart. And so that's why when you are dropping the price, you do have to support it with additional marketing and promotion, and tools like BookBub are a good way to do that, because it means that you're advertising the fact that your book is 99p to a wider audience. Coming back to author platforms, making sure authors are aware of price drops sounds really obvious, but making sure authors are aware of price drops and sharing those through their platforms if they have them. And then equally through our own direct consumer marketing, obviously we will highlight those price promotions to make sure that we're not just dropping the price for the sake of it, that we're actually then advertising the fact that it's at that price. And I think the other thing to think about is, while I can see why some people might think that dropping the price feels very scary and feels like that you're lowering the value of the title, I think you have to think long term about these things. That if you're introducing customers to readers to a book at 99p, if they enjoy that book, they're likely to then go on and purchase another book by that author at a higher price, etc. So I think thinking about it long term rather than just thinking about it as a short term fix, it's really important. And also being reactive with it, because I think in some cases people feel that if they drop the price at 99p, they have to then leave it at 99p for a long amount of time, or they might think the opposite, that they have to drop it for one day only, or etc. And I think being reactive on that and just gauging where you're getting your value out of that volume is really important, so that you know whether actually when you decide to drop the price, you don't have to set in stone how long that's going to be for, because you can react to how the market's going. So I think that's really important to think about as well. And trying it out and testing. There might be a backlist title in there that hasn't been price promoted and hasn't sold a copy in 6 months, but actually doing a price promotion and using a tool such as BookBub would be a good way to just give it some momentum again.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Like, thinking about the bigger picture is really key when you're trying to craft something like this. And I think creating a plan to reach the ideal audience for your book often focuses on finding sort of that lookalike reader. But what if this is new, or an area without many existing comps? Like, that's where I think the fun in getting creative can come in. I recently helped a partner promote a book about, in this case, it was mindfulness and meditation, a genre that they had not worked much more before. And we advised sticking with like really narrow category keywords, choosing author targets that work best in that space. So not necessarily an author with a dedicated fan base, but like identifying readers especially interested in a topic. And I love that, like, Nia, you mentioned earlier, like thinking outside of books even, and thinking of what else those reader personas that you're thinking about are engaging with, and where and how they're engaging with them. So, have you thought about how to seek out those comparisons and target audiences where they might not be obvious? Like, Nikki, do you have any tips for finding that unknown audience?
Yeah, when we kind of come across that quite a bit in the SF list, because there is such varying ranges of various different genres in the science fiction and fantasy world. Sometimes I'm still getting my head around the different nuances of them. But it's always to kind of start as early as possible in the book's life cycle. Reach out to like bloggers that you see possibly doing something similar that you could latch onto, or partnerships. We've worked with Tandem and Love Reading on occasions to get their information and their data through like readerships and such, and just a kind of trial and error element of just exploring where they are and what kind of works. Again, also the outside of the books world is a sort of wealth of knowledge. If there isn't a book about it, there's a TV series about it or a movie about it, and you can kind of look at that market as well. But it's just trying to gather as much data as early as possible to then try and see what creates the best effect and what kind of works best for you. We also built a lot of newsletters recently as well, so we've got that direct to readership communication kind of starting up. It's been probably over the last year since we've got our 6 imprints all kind of set in stone. The next step was reaching the readership for them through dedicated newsletters and such.
Yes, we definitely we know that area well.
Research is so important. Like you mentioned, sort of trial and testing, Nikki, and I think in order to do that, the research you have to put in, you have to commit to it. You have to find those spaces where people are talking about these niche genres. We're looking now into broadening our genres even further to find more niche genres to operate in, and those communities can be really thriving and really exciting and really different. You just have to find where they are and do the research and get involved in them, because it's not a one size fits all. So, as I'm sure I don't know huge about SF, Nikki, but I imagine that it's very similar, those sort of niche subgenres within SF, similarly with romance, similarly with crime. You can actually find these sort of hubs of readers who are absolutely voracious, and you just have to get to know them a bit better to know what's best to use to market to them.
Yes, for sure. And I think, we talked a lot today about building that organic, authentic community around a project, and really how to build that into the process for our marketing work, so that, at BookBub, anyone who engages with an author's featured deal becomes part of that our author's target audience on our ads platform. So partners can use our products in tandem to reach, to grow the reach of an author's promotion. How are you thinking about authentically finding readers? Is it the same way, or are you thinking of growing in different areas?
We've got, so at the moment, we've got 4 sort of very targeted reader communities that we've set up. Each one is for a different genre. So, for example, we've got Sixpence Stories, which is a historical fiction community. We've got The Murder List, which is a thriller community. We've got Poison and Pens, which is cozy mystery. And then we've got Picky Readers, which is Gangland. And having those 4 specific genre communities that we've set up, and we're growing very quickly, allows us to speak to those readers directly and get to know them. The example I always give is, if we put a crossword puzzle into Sixpence Stories for our historical fiction readers, everyone absolutely loves it and devour it. If we put a crossword puzzle into our Gangland community, Peaky Readers, it doesn't necessarily have the same impact. And so it's not a one size fits all. You have to make sure that you're catering to each community. But that's been a really valuable piece of work in our marketing team to make sure that we're, targeting those communities and growing them really effectively.
Yeah, it's been a similar approach.
Hilarious.
Yeah, we have a similar approach on the Head of Zeus list with our different imprints, particularly over the last year. The newsletters we've launched, and also we have a trade newsletter, so booksellers can engage with Head of Zeus's things. We often do like proof giveaways and such, but it's the creating a kind of communication between the readers and the experts in-house in those genres I think will be key to creating these like organic communities, authentic voices within what we publish.
Yeah, it certainly is a work in progress always. And I think to sort of wrap us up, I want to make sure that everyone has time to get to their work today, but how else, if and at all internally, are you exploring ways to broaden your perspectives within your company? So I'm thinking about this because at BookBub, we've worked really hard to try to build an internal culture that fosters equity, inclusion, belonging. And in the last several years, we've launched programming and training and other resources to understand and support our communities. So our goal is essentially for our leaders and employees to become better allies, to conduct our work in a way that reflects our awareness and sensitivity towards a diverse range of perspectives and identities. Are you thinking along these lines as well? Nikki, do you want to finish us off?
Yeah, well, it's been one of the great things about joining Bloomsbury, because we're part of that bigger community. They have done a lot for diversity and inclusion over the past few years, and now Head of Zeus employees can join their various networks around the Pride or the BAME network and Disabilities Awareness Network. We can join that and join up with other colleagues in the industry and discuss these matters and see how to improve them, working out how they're making it better from their side, and which elements of those can trickle down into the HOS world as well. So it has been one of the really great reasons, things of joining Bloomsbury. So it's been super helpful for us.
That broadening of your own community internally is probably really exciting moment.
Yeah, something I think I touched on right at the beginning is at Boldwood we recruit always nationwide. So every member of staff works remotely, and it means that every single job ad we have that goes up recruits completely nationwide. And what's been really exciting about that is, I've got colleagues everywhere from York to Cornwall working at Boldwood, and also colleagues who'd previously left publishing because it was so London centric and their employers couldn't necessarily accommodate them working remotely, and now have been able to come back into the industry, super talented people, but work remotely and work from the part of the country that they live. So that's really exciting. And I think that's been a really great way that Boldwood was set up.
Yeah, and that flexibility has been key to us all. We're able to do things like this panel from 3 different locations today. It's really helped to make some positive changes. Well, so I want to wrap up and say a huge heartfelt thank you to Nikki and Nia so much for your time today, for preparing for this and sharing your thoughts on launching new voices, reaching new readers, and the work we're all doing together to expand the scope and reach of publishing of the future. We all hope that all of you listening to us here will reach out and continue the new audience conversations. Please feel free to email me at melissa@bookbub.com. And certainly please seek us out at FutureBook to say hello. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks for having us. It's great.